In terms of failure in reality, this picture really says it all. And this is the Wimmera in the 1930s. And of course what they did was cut down the trees and then the wind blew. And the boy is actually standing beside the butt of a tree, and that's the root system. So all of the topsoil sort of up to his shoulders has been blown away. So in terms of foresight and understanding ecological processes, that's what I'm sort of saying about a failure in reality. We didn't think it would happen that way. Sure, I did the assessment and I got it wrong, and now look what's happened. That's probably the worst possible outcome that you could have for a failure to achieve best practice in ecological studies. Anyway, if you could keep going with the things. So environmental impact assessment, anyway, just to gain some background for my exploration of the more detailed aspects. Environmental impact assessment, its objectives are to gather reliable information about likely environmental impacts in advance. It seeks to prevent environmental problems before they arise, and in that way it institutionalises foresight. Now, foresight is a thing that our legal system is fairly uncomfortable with. Systems like land use planning and environmental impact assessment all look to the future and try to work out what's going to happen in the future, but actually our legal system, a common law system, in many dimensions is focused on the past, even in the way it derives its principles from past cases. It draws on historical material. Our system is based around the big day in court, where hopefully all of the repercussions of what has occurred have finished, and it's a matter for the legal system then, the court, to work out who was culpable and how much they have to pay to whom. That, in that way, our legal system doesn't engage with foresight and prediction very well, and I suppose the uncertainty, the precautionary principle, has been introduced in a way to address that. But in many ways, environmental impact assessment is a mechanism that is supposed to bring foresight into the way that official public decisions are made. In that way, environmental impact assessment implements ecologically sustainable development. It's a key tool in balancing intergenerational equity and achieving certainty within the precautionary principle. Now, when environmental impact assessment is undertaken, then the question is what standard of study will be sufficient to achieve the generally a legal requirement that the environmental impact assessment be done. Even in a system where environmental impact assessment is not mandatory, and in Victoria that's the way it is since amendments in 1996, as I recall, it might have been 94 anyway, it was under the Kent government. In contrast, the New South Wales environmental impact assessment is mandatory. If there will be a project that could have a significant impact on the environment, then environmental impact assessment must be done. Here, the Minister can then think about publishing something in the Government Gazette to say that it should be done, but under a mandatory system, of course, it must be done. However, even under a discretionary system like ours in Victoria, once it has been required that environmental impact assessment be done, then that brings into play a requirement that something at the standard, there must be something that answers a legal definition of environmental impact assessment produced at the end. Now, if you look at all of the jurisdictions around the world that have adopted the model based on the National Environmental Policy Act of the United States, this is when I mentioned the American model of environmental impact assessment, this is what I was referring to. In 1969, the Johnson administration introduced the National Environmental Policy Act, and that introduced the model of environmental impact assessment that we know now, with the preparation of an environmental impact statement and then consideration of that environmental impact assessment by governmental analysis and assessment, and then often the production of a final environmental impact assessment, or in Victoria a separate assessment report. Now, if we look at all of the places that have adopted that system, and that's very many, it's over 70 jurisdictions around the world have adopted the same model that we have. If you look at what all of the courts in those countries have said about the quality in environmental impact assessment, then I've argued you can distill 10 principles of quality in environmental impact assessment. And I put those into my article there. It was published in 1997, which it's shocking to think is 11 years ago, but the article is still being cited in other people's articles and in courts, so I can at least use it as the take-off point for a 15-minute overview of this issue.